One of the major differences between high school and college is how much more reading you have to do in college. A lot of times in high school, your teachers will use the textbook as the primary source of information and will use class time to teach lessons that help you understand what's in the textbook. College is the total opposite. Your college instructors expect you to read and understand the textbook so you can keep up with the class lessons. It's very unusual for college instructors to ask students to read the textbook out loud during class, like you might in high school. So you have to be sure that you are keeping up with the reading assignments so you can understand what is happening in the class. Most college students don't enjoy completing assigned readings in their textbooks. What most students don't realize, though, is that readings are essential to understanding and processing new material that your teacher presents in class. Ideally, you need 3 exposures to new material. First, complete your assigned readings in the textbook before you come to class. Even if you don't fully understand what you read, at least you will gain some basic knowledge about it and will be better prepared when the teacher explains the material during the next class session. 2. Come to class, where your instructor will usually fill in the details and provide clarity around what you read. If you come to class but didn't do the reading, you are more likely to be confused when your instructor goes over the material in class. Your instructor is not necessarily introducing you to the material. That was the purpose of you doing the reading. Their job is to explain the material and help make it clear. This is another big difference between high school and college. More responsibility is on you to initiate learning. 3. After class, within 24 hours, review what you learned. Go back over your notes, quiz yourself on the new terms or concepts, or write a 1-minute summary. This gives you the opportunity to see if you have any lingering questions so you can visit during office hours or otherwise get your questions answered before the next class. If you do not understand what you went over today in class, you are more likely to be confused during the next class when the instructor is likely to build on what you learned today. Here are 5 tips that you can use to improve your reading habits. First, let's talk about what you should be doing while you read. Is this statement true or false? Highlighting and underlining phrases and sentences in your textbook are active reading techniques. It's false. Highlighting and underlining are passive techniques. Do you have to understand what you read to highlight or underline? No. To read actively, you need to interact with the text. You can interact by taking notes while you read or writing down questions you have while you read or thinking about how the text matches or doesn't match what you already know about a topic. The next 4 strategies we'll talk about are all active reading techniques. This student has underlined many passages, but there are no notes. This is not proper highlighting. At this point, it has become coloring. There's no explanation about why these passages have been highlighted and why they are important for the understanding of the chapter or book as a whole. This is not active reading. Look at these 3 books. One is a novel, one is a cookbook, and one is a textbook. You probably know that you shouldn't read a textbook the same way you read a novel or a cookbook. We are going to use the acronym PSAR to talk about how to effectively read your textbooks. The first step is prepare. Before you read a textbook, you should prepare yourself and your environment. You may not do the same thing to prepare to read a novel or a cookbook. The student reading the novel is stretched out on a couch with a comfy blanket, the remote control, and earbuds. What happens if you use that approach to read a textbook? What about the student reading the cookbook? This student is in the kitchen, prepared with pots, pans, and the materials needed to cook something yummy. What happens when they try to knock out their chemistry reading while trying to also cook dinner? Finally, we see a student reading a textbook. Note that the student has prepared her environment. She is sitting upright with minimal distractions, no cell phone, TV, or other devices to take her attention away from reading. How should you prepare your environment to read your textbook? When you first open your textbook to read an assigned chapter, you would first survey the chapter. This means flip through the pages and make some initial mental notes, such as how long the chapter is, and if there are review questions or a summary at the end of the chapter. Then follow these steps to begin to think critically about what's in the chapter. Read the chapter headings and subheadings. Don't just start reading the chapter. By reading the headings and subheadings, you can prepare mentally for the information you are about to take in. After you read the headings and subheadings, go back and turn them into questions. For example, if you are reading a chemistry book and you see a heading, States of Matter, then you can ask, what are the states of matter? Does that mean solids, liquids, and gases? Write these questions down either in the textbook itself or in your notebook. As you are writing the questions, think about what you already know about the topic from the class meetings, or if you studied the subject in high school, or what you know from the real world. In my previous chemistry example of states of matter, I have heard that solids, liquids, and gases, so I speculated that those terms are the different states of matter. Finally, connect the ideas to your life. This may be hard to do with some subjects, but try. You might relate states of matter to cooking and think about melting chocolate to turn it from a solid to a liquid, or boiling water to turn it from a liquid to a gas. Let's survey Chapter 12 together. Open your book to page 267 and flip through the chapter to see the headings and subheadings. This chapter is about test-taking strategies. Here are the headings. Take a couple of minutes and write in your notebooks one question for each heading. Think of questions that would help you concentrate and personalize the content. Here are some example questions that can help you survey the chapter. So before the test, you might ask yourself, what should I do before I begin the test? During the test, I get nervous. What could I do differently? In this case, you're personalizing it and thinking about you as a test taker. After the test, what does that matter? The test is over. Types of test questions: true, false, multiple choice, essay. What else is there? Connect the information to knowledge that you already have. After you prepare to read and then surveying your assigned reading, you finally get to read the text. After you read, you should annotate or take notes when you read. It is best to annotate in your text, but you can also annotate in your notebook. Look at the example here. How has someone annotated this text? Notice this long annotation at the bottom of this page. The reader wrote a few reflective sentences about he or she feels about the text. The text is a short story, and the reader connects the experience of the narrator of the short story to his or her own life. This is a great way to check that you understand a new text if you can relate it to your life. If you can relate it to your own life, then you are more likely to understand and remember the story. Let's look at two types of annotations that this reader has used particularly well. First, you can see the reader interacting with the text with these questions. At the top, the reader wrote, need to look this up. Something in the text clearly didn't match what the reader thought he or she knew about the topic. The reader also wrote safe in the left margin. We can see that the reader was thinking about what the text says rather than just accepting the words on the page. It is also good that the reader used color and drawings to make sense of the text. When we visualize or draw pictures to understand written words, we are using both sides of our brain, which is called dual coding. This helps us learn new information and remember important details. Here is another example of annotation to demonstrate that you don't have to use a highlighter or drawings to annotate effectively. After you finish reading an assigned chapter or article, you aren't really finished with it. You should regularly review what you've read to keep the ideas fresh in your mind. What can you do to review a chapter? Here are some specific activities to try. After a lecture or class meeting, go back to the textbook and scan the text for terms you discussed in class. Look for any ideas or examples in the textbook that are related to what you learned in class. Also, be sure to read your annotations periodically, especially before and after class. If you annotated well, then you will save time later because you won't have to go back and read the entire chapter again. Close your textbook and notebook and say out loud what you've learned. This is a good way to check your understanding of the concepts. If you just read a chapter in your American history book about all the European countries that originally colonized North America, and you can only name the English colonies, then you need to review that chapter and/or your notes. There were also large colonies settled by Spain, the Netherlands, and France, to name a few other European countries who originally colonized North America. Finally, a related strategy is to quiz yourself. Look at the beginning or end of the chapter for a list of vocabulary words, or make your own list, and then see how many of those terms you can explain in your own words.